A quarter into the season, I still have questions about these Miami Hurricanes. Which of those questions are they going to answer this Saturday?
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Friday. We made it. I'm Alex Dono, University of Miami alumnus, co-host of Locked On ACC and writer for Canes County at Rivals. And thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We're available free wherever you get your podcast. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. On this episode of Locked On Canes, we will talk about this proposed settlement that could actually keep Florida State and Clemson in the ACC until 2030 at least, and how Miami could potentially benefit from this as well. We will have a prediction on this episode for what the final score is going to be between the Miami Hurricanes and USF Bulls this Saturday from Raymond James Stadium. But guys, 3-0 for Miami, looking fantastic. The national media has taken notice. Hurricanes are now the number 8 team in the entire country. They could potentially rise even higher in the rankings with a victory this coming weekend. But I believe there are unanswered questions about this team based on the opponents that they faced, based on certain aspects that we haven't really seen hit their stride yet, some of the meat that's been left on the bone. I still have questions as to how legit these 2024 Miami Hurricanes are. And a handful of those questions, I strongly believe we can get the answers to those on Saturday when the Hurricanes take on the Bulls. Big question being, I'll start with this one. Is that Miami Hurricanes 12th ranked rushing defense in the country, is it as legitimate as it looks on paper? Miami so far this year are giving up just 65.7 rushing yards per game. And they've really been almost perfect at stopping the run, except for one play, that breakdown on defense that allowed Florida's Montrell Johnson to go for 71 yards and basically waltz into the end zone on a busted play. Outside of that, Miami's been almost perfect at stopping the run. But of course, after Florida, you had overmatched opponents like FAMU and Ball State. So Miami's going to be tested big time on Saturday, big time. USF has the 8th rated ground attack in the country. We're also going to find out how legitimate they are, by the way, but they're 8th in the nation at 268.7 yards per game. So they average 200 more yards than Miami gives up per game. Something's got to give. And, just 3 games in for South Florida, USF has 4 ball carriers with at least 100 yards and 2 of them with over 200 yards rushing so far. They're actually led by their quarterback, Byron Brown, who's got 254 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns on the ground. Kelly Joyner has 220 yards and 4 touchdowns. Former Gator Naquan Wright, we talked about him with Larry Bluestein yesterday, a powerful back, has 188 yards and 2 touchdowns. Teron Keith has 105 yards, 3 touchdowns on the season. So they have a 4-headed, if not 5-headed, multi-pronged rushing attack that can really test Miami. And of course, as mentioned, Miami's been really good against the run so far, 12th in the country. And then another stat that plays into that in Miami's favor is Hurricanes are 8th in America so far in tackles for loss at 9 per game. So Miami's doing really well with the TFL. And on Miami's front 7, we've been seeing linebackers Kiko Mauinoa and Wesley Basaint, who's been one of the breakout players this year. They've been playing at a high level. On Miami's defensive front, Tyler Barron, been one of the best players in the country so far with his 4.5 sacks. Simeon Barrow, Elijah Alston have been stout up front. Akeem Mesidor had an excellent game against Ball State. He's really coming on and coming back from his injury. We'll talk a little bit more about Ruben Bane later in this episode. He might be back this weekend. If not, we'll see him again soon. So that's the big question there. We're going to find out how Miami's 12th ranked rushing defense stacks up against a top 10 rushing offense in the country. Is Miami truly legit, as they seem to be, in stopping the run? The next question that can be answered this Saturday against USF, for Miami and their star quarterback Cam Ward, who's Currently, the odds-on favorite to win the Heisman. But here's the question. Has Cam Ward truly fixed his turnover issues? You probably heard this from rival fans right after Miami signed Cam Ward, when Ward picked Miami over the NFL to come here in the transfer portal. All your Florida State fans, and, if there are any real USF fans, they seem to be popping up on social media this week. I'd never heard of any until a few days ago, but you probably heard this. Cam Ward is a turnover machine. Get ready, Miami. Not this year, folks. Ward, so far, 0 fumbles and just 1 interception. His touchdown to interception ratio is a sterling 11-1 so far. And yeah, people will bring up he fumbled 14 times. Not all of those were lost fumbles, by the way, but he fumbled 14 times at Washington State last year. But at Miami, he's got a much better offensive line. And Ward has put a ton of focus on ball security, and it's paid dividends so far. But the reason why this game is going to be a great test for, Cam Ward's turnover margin is South Florida, so far, they're 8th in the nation in takeaways. They've forced 8 turnovers so far this year. 3 of those were against Alabama. That's a big reason why that game was close until the fourth quarter in Tuscaloosa. Was Alabama kept coughing up the football. So if Miami comes out of this one turnover free or close to it, if the Hurricanes take care of the football in Tampa, we can gain a lot of confidence in the efficiency of this offense. Here's the next big question that's going to be answered this weekend, this Saturday. We'll know this about Miami's defense. Can the Hurricanes adjust to and handle tempo? USF presents a unique challenge from the pace of their offense. That's something that Lance Guidry, Miami's defensive coordinator, said it's hard for your scout team to simulate. So Miami's going to get some on-the-job training this week against the no-huddle, hurry-up offense. Because you remember last year is not this year, of course, but last season, Miami struggled against a no-huddle from North Carolina in the second half of that loss last year. So let's see how they handle it this year from the Bulls. When we come back, I want to talk about some of the other questions that, and by the way, I just want you guys to know, obviously I'm very bullish on Miami, but these are important questions. We're going to find out throughout the season how legit Miami truly is. So I gave you the questions that I strongly believe will be answered this Saturday. I'll talk about the ones that might not be. We're also going to take you guys' questions on this episode. The Locked On Canes insiders have been bringing it strong. So, folks, it's a Friday. You can't ruin that, and we're nowhere near done. We're only getting started on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. You want to keep it locked. I'm only getting started with eBay Motors because passion, drive, and patience. That's the formula for winning championships, and it's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. For your next listen, make sure you check out Locked On ACC. Kenton Gibbs from Locked On Wolfpack and I, we host that show every single day. On today's episode of Locked On ACC, we talked a lot about this proposed settlement that could keep Florida State and Clemson. They've been very upset. They've been suing the conference, but there could be a settlement that would actually keep them in the conference and maybe keep a few others somewhat happy until 2030. So we'll talk about that a little bit more in this episode as well. So I'm going to give you guys a few more questions that I have about Miami this year that I don't know for sure are going to be answered this week. I'll also give you my prediction on how this USF game is going to play out. Does Miami have a top rushing attack in the country? Like we're talking about top 10, top 15 type of rushing attack. Because again, like on paper, a lot of us were thinking, okay, you got Damian Martinez now. Mark Fletcher's healthy again. You've got one of the better offensive lines in the country. Is Miami going to be top 10 in rushing? Now, so far, Miami ranks 33rd in America, which is good. It's fine. A lot of their success, though, has come so far in the second halves of the FAMU and Ball State games after they wore down those defenses. Now, to be fair, because I will defend Miami's rushing attack, the Hurricanes have had backups play a lot on the offensive lines so far, which can affect the running game. And against Ball State in particular, Ball State loaded up the box in the first half. So they were daring Cam Ward to beat them through the air, that's an interesting choice, right? Like, it's like, we would like to shut down your running game, and let's see if your quarterback can beat us down the field. Oh, wait, you've got arguably the best quarterback in the country, some of the top receivers and tight ends in the country. Okay, let's see how that plays out for us. But I think there were reasons why Miami didn't run much in the first half against Ball State. And guess what? Miami's offensive line will be back to almost full health this week. Mario Cristobal confirmed on Monday. Starting left tackle Jalen Rivers, he's back. He's one of the best players on the team. Starting right guard, Inez Cooper, who's not missed a full game yet, but he did get hurt in the second quarter of the Ball State game. He's going to be back. We're still waiting on Ryan Rodriguez, who started the season at left guard. I think he's going to need a little more time for his injury, so we'll probably see Matthew McCoy in that spot. But Miami's offensive line should be in better shape this week than they were the last couple of weeks. So I'd like to see if we see more from Miami's running game. But the reason why I'm not sure that question is going to be answered this week specifically, it might be, but I'm not sure about that because I wonder how Miami's going to attack USF's defense. The Bulls have been much better against the run than against the pass. The Bulls so far 94th against the pass. They gave up 397 passing yards against Southern Miss. So Cam Ward might carve them up for 400 plus. So I don't know if this is going to be the week where we see the ground game explosion. I don't know. That might have to come later in the year because Miami probably has more options attacking USF down the field. So we'll see if that question gets answered, guys. So here's another one. Might be answered this week, might not be. Are Miami's defensive backs as good as they've looked so far statistically? So USF's offense to this point has been one-dimensional this season. Wasn't really the case last year, but this season, USF is 120th in the country in passing. So how much are they actually going to test Miami's DBs, right? Because so far, O.J. Frederick as a true freshman has been a revelation. Mish Powell has been awesome. Jaden Harris has been one of the best defensive players on the team so far. We haven't really even seen Damari Brown very much because he got injured in the Florida game, but he looked really good before he got injured. But again, you're going up against a team that's not thrown the football effectively so far this year. How much is USF going to test Miami's passing defense? Now, again, they have looked like a very one-dimensional team this year, USF, but last season, Byron Brown threw for well over 3,000 yards last year. So he hasn't really gotten it going this year. And, Miami, I mentioned their defensive backs playing well so far. That's a team thing, of course, because the pass rush has a lot to do with that. But Miami is 13th in passing defense. They only give up 123 passing yards per game. So the Hurricanes have been really good there. I don't know if this is the game that's really going to kind of test them and put them to the limits. All right, so I'll make my prediction for this game. And to the USF fans who have found us, go ahead. Bring me your hate. You can talk about your inferior Cuban sandwiches all you want to. You can talk. They're doing this weird thing now on USF Twitter because I rightfully called them out for not being in South Florida. Like Tampa is not in South Florida. I'm sorry. And then the USF fans are coming back at me like, well, University of Miami's not in Miami. It's in Coral Gables. Well, I mean, if you don't understand Miami-Dade County and the municipalities within, I mean, we can argue about that all day. The real argument will be settled on the field this coming weekend. And I think USF, if they're going to have a legitimate chance to beat Miami, they're going to need to throw the football effectively. They can't do it one-dimensionally. They can't just do it on the ground. I think for Miami, if the Hurricanes, I believe Miami with Cam Ward can actually attack downfield more explosively than Jalen Milroe and Alabama did. So, like, even if USF does manage to slow down the run, I think Cam Ward can air them out and pick them apart. I see Miami, I think they'll get tested at the line of scrimmage in this game, but winning the Lions' share of those battles up front. I just think Miami is better and deeper. And I'm going to go with the Hurricanes I hate to put this on record because I'm superstitious, but I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to put it on record. I've got 45-14 Miami. I think the Hurricanes are going to win this one by a handful of, what would that be? A 31-point margin of victory. So I have them covering the 17-point spread and winning the game 45-14. That is my prediction for Miami at USF. I want to take some questions from you guys, the Locked On Canes Insiders. If you want to become a Locked On Canes Insider, click the link in the show description below. You can try it free for 14 days. When you become an insider, you get text messages directly from my phone to yours and vice versa. You can ask me questions. We answer a lot of those on shows. I give you guys recruiting scoops, breaking news, show updates. I gave you guys a preview of our topic for the show today before the show actually came out, which hopefully you guys appreciate. So try it free for 14 days. And then if you like it, you can opt in for $4.99 a month. Give you a lot of added value on there on the Locked On Canes Insiders chat. Insider named Trelvis, who's a great dude, asked me, why are people so crazy about, quote, like why this guy is not doing this or that guy doing that? I think he was responding to, people like already getting worried about Damian Martinez. Like, oh, is Damian Martinez not as good of a running back as we thought he was going to be? He says, this program has been mediocre for 20 years. They're building what they believe is a firm foundation, he says. Can we sit back and enjoy the ride, minus the microscope, on every little detail, as if this is a perennial title contender? He says, smells like bandwagon to me. Well, listen, I think when fans start putting certain things like, how come this guy's snap count was so low? How come this guy doesn't have 6 sacks already? How come this guy doesn't have 1,000 rushing yards already? I think when fans start to put that sort of stuff under the microscope, I think that's a symptom of a program that's doing well. Because, I mean, what are they talking about in Tallahassee right now? It's like they're talking about benching the transfer quarterback that they were so excited to get, who's terrible. They're talking about benching him for a guy who couldn't throw last year. Like, Brock Glenn was terrible. Now they all want to see Brock Glenn. They just want to win a game in Tallahassee. Florida's talking about trying to hire their next coach. Why Lane Kiffin would leave Ole Miss in a heartbeat for Florida, and Miami fans are talking about, uniform combinations, and they're talking about why their transfer running back doesn't have 10,000 yards already this year. That's what I refer to as first world problems, Trelvis. I think people are always going to put stuff under the microscope. And listen, I have no choice but to put things under the microscope because I'm here for you guys every single day. Every single day. We talk plenty of big picture stuff here on Locked On Canes, but we also talk about some little picture microscope stuff because that's, I get 30 plus minutes with you guys every single day. There's always plenty of stuff we can get to, big picture, little picture, what have you. But yeah, listen, I think there is something to be learned from what Trelvis wrote to us is, sit back and enjoy the ride just a little bit, right? When the team is winning games in blowout fashion, hopefully that continues. Instead of complaining about things, just kick your feet up and enjoy a program that is on the rise. I appreciate that. We get this question from Country Kane. This question has been asked every single week, and it will continue to be asked until he's back. He says, will Ruben Bane be back this weekend? Seems more than a soft tissue injury if he does not play. I don't know about that. I think I think what it is a soft tissue injury. It's his calf, plus an abundance of caution when your last 2 games have been FAMU and Ball State. This is a tougher test this week against South Florida, but the toughest of tests will come once the ACC schedule begins. So, again, I don't know for sure if Bane is going to play this Saturday. When we spoke to our guy, Gio Milian, early this week, he thought it was kind of a 50-50 type of thing that, Bane probably could play, but he might not play because they might be, saving him for the stretch run for the final, 2/3 of the year. So I don't know, but I don't have, any reason to believe it's more serious than what it's been on the surface. Because keep in mind who Miami's played the last couple of weeks. You've got the luxury of getting this guy better. Think of who you've played the last couple of weeks and also who else you have on that defensive line, because Tyler Barron is out there terrorizing opposing offenses. So you haven't needed Bane that much, and I hope we'll see him back soon. I think we'll see him back soon. We get this question from Jake, not from State Farm, just Jake. He says, do you think Cam Ward and Emory Williams are turning heads for blue chip quarterbacks, potentially helping Miami land 4- and 5-star QBs? Well, I mean, yes. I mean, the way, and obviously Ward to a much bigger extent than Emory, although Emory played, very well the second half against Ball State this past week. But, Cam Ward is out there just flashing in an offense that is allowing him to flash. So Shannon Dawson and Mario Cristobal are putting a quarterback-friendly and wide receiver-friendly offense on display for the entire world to see. That can help you in recruiting. But let's keep in mind, I think Miami's already doing well in quarterback recruiting. Luke Nickel, who's been committed and locked in. I know that there's like some folks out there from Auburn who are like, well, I think we can flip that Nickel guy. And of course you got the Cam Newton connection because Cam Newton is a mentor to Nickel. And of course he's, probably the greatest Auburn player ever. So now there's some chatter out of Auburn that we're trying to flip Luke. That's my Auburn accent, by the way. I'll be here all week. Well, it's already Friday. But no, I'm not too worried about Nickel. I think Nickel is more solid than any other member of Miami's class of 2025. I don't think that dude is going anywhere. And also Darian Coleman, who Miami has verbally committed for the class of 2026. He's out there dealing for Jones High School in Orlando. Like I was watching some clips of him from his game. I think he played on Thursday night, and he's got a tremendous arm, and he's really highly touted coming out of high school. He's still got another year in high school next year, of course. So Miami's already doing well on the quarterback recruiting front. And if their offense keeps running the way it's running, I think they're going to be good for years to come. We get this interesting question from David. David is representing the U in St. Louis. He says, I'll leave it to you to decide whether or not it's worth going down this rabbit hole, but I'm curious which former Miami Hurricanes who transferred away are finding the greatest success. He says, I was thinking about this when I saw Colby Young score for Georgia and Henry Parrish at Ole Miss. He said, so as far as like Miami transfers who have, and I haven't like gone out of my way to track some of these guys. I wish them all well. No ill will towards anyone who transferred away. It's just I focus on the guys who are here, not the guys who left. But one of those names that you mentioned, I've definitely take notice of. Henry Parrish, who's back at Ole Miss. I always thought Parrish was a little underrated by Miami fans while he was here. He's tearing it up at Ole Miss. 338 rushing yards already. 6 touchdowns. They played 3 games. He's got 6 touchdowns. He had 6 touchdowns all of last season at Miami. Parrish is going off for 7.7 yards per carry. So I think, listen, Miami is fine without Parrish. Ole Miss is better with him. So I guess it worked out in both directions because Miami's got Damian Martinez and Mark Fletcher has looked fantastic so far this year. Jordan Lyle, A.J. Allen looked unbelievable against Ball State last week. So Miami is doing fine at running back, and obviously Ole Miss is tearing it up with Parrish. And then another one that I've noticed so far, Nigelique Kelly at UCF. He looks great so far. He got a highlight reel sack a game or two ago. He's got 8 tackles and a forced fumble on the year. So Nigelique, unfortunately, like he never really found his footing in Miami because he had injury issues the last couple of years. But him at UCF, he's been doing great so far. So I've really been happy for him, and I wish him all the best. Is the ACC saved until at least 2030? We'll talk about that and more when we come back. You want to keep it locked right here to Locked On Canes. Folks, we've been winning money this football season and having a great time on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And yeah, you've got Miami 16.5-point favorites this weekend against USF. If you dare and you think Miami's going to win big, you can check that out on FanDuel Sportsbook. And folks, we have something a little different for you on FanDuel. For the next couple of days, now through September 22nd, it's not too late for all FanDuel customers to bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then, with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. Just visit FanDuel.com to download America's #1 sportsbook. Thank you so much for making this Friday episode of Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Guys, make sure right after the USF game finishes, make sure you check out my guy Jim Greasehopper, who's going to be doing the Miami postcast right after the game. Right after the game, Grease is going to be live talking about whatever Miami does to USF, hopefully a dominant victory this Saturday. Jim Greasehopper will be on the postcast right after that, and then I'll talk to you guys again on Sunday after the game. I will be also talking Saturday night doing the network post game on WQAM radio, but make sure you check out my guy Grease on the postcast. So a lot of folks out there are claiming we predicted this would happen. Oh, you listened to me. I told you all along. I don't know if anyone really predicted this settlement that seems to be gaining some steam, a possible settlement. So we all know for the past roughly 9 months, Florida State and Clemson have been suing the ACC to try to break the grant of rights and leave the conference as soon as possible. Now, the ACC has that grant of rights. They're questioning the validity of it, which would theoretically lock every team in until 2036, and it would cost north of $500 million to get out. So that's why they're suing to try to get out of that. Now, there have been some settlement talks, and one that was leaked and is reported this past week is the ACC would agree to actually shorten the grant of rights until 2030. So take 6 years off of it in exchange for Florida State and Clemson dropping the lawsuits, agreeing to stay through 2030 with the ACC implementing a new revenue model. You know, they get all that TV money from ESPN, all that money. It's not as much money as the SEC gets for their deal and the Big Ten gets for their deal, of course, but the ACC gets this money from ESPN. And instead of distributing it evenly to all schools, which they already ditched, by the way, they already had agreed to go to what they call a success initiative, which is if you make the college football playoff and you make a run, you get extra revenue based on your on-field performance. Now, that's not what Florida State and Clemson wanted. Florida State and Clemson have wanted the revenue to be distributed not based on on-field success, but on television success. How much ratings do we generate? How many eyes do we bring in? And I got to be honest with you, it makes sense. It makes dollars and cents because when you're talking about distributing television money, which you get based on TV ratings, wouldn't it make sense to make the payouts higher for the schools that bring the most eyes to the set? And yes, in recent years, Florida State and Clemson have been the top, ratings getters from the ACC. So they would stand to make more money from this. Now, of course, Florida State's not putting a very good product on the field this year. They're still getting eyes on the set. And just so we're clear on this, because some people are reporting this wrong. Some people are saying, well, the ACC is going to give Clemson and Florida State more money than everyone else. Everyone has the same opportunity for that money. So we've got to hope. And obviously, Miami does well on TV. They're only going to do better if the team keeps getting better on the field because you win. More people are going to watch your games. So you would have an opportunity if this settlement is approved and you have the opportunity to make more money based on your television ratings. If Miami keeps getting better and keeps playing marquee matchups, this could benefit Miami the same way it can obviously benefit Florida State and Clemson. And, if you can lock all these teams in till 2030, you do create more stability for your conference. And then we can all go crazy and lose our minds again in 2030. I just have to wonder if this settlement will actually be approved, because in order for this to actually happen, you have to have, from what we understand, a 2/3 majority of the 18 members of the ACC voting for this. You have to have a 2/3 majority. So obviously this sounds like a great thing potentially for Florida State and Clemson, hopefully for Miami. A team like Louisville that's on the rise right now gets good TV ratings. North Carolina gets good TV ratings, especially for basketball. This could be good. But are like the Wake Forests, the Boston colleges, are they going to be on board with this? Like the ones that don't really pull their weight revenue-wise? Because the way the ACC's been for most of their history is every school gets an even revenue split. Wake Forest gets the same split as Florida State, right? If that's all about the change, are you going to get the schools that don't generate TV ratings Are they going to approve this? I think they might for the greater good, because if keeping the conference together is better for everybody, I think they might approve it, but we will find out. It's not a done deal. We're probably not going to know too much more about this until a few weeks from now. So we will see. We will see if this and I know a lot of Miami fans are like, we don't even want to save the ACC. Let's get the hell out. So we'll see what happens, folks. But this is something that is in the works to potentially keep Florida State and Clemson in the conference until 2030. We'll talk to you guys again next time. Miami versus USF. I cannot wait for that. Keep it locked right here. We'll talk to you on another episode of Locked On Canes, part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.